All right, we're continuing on with our crab today, and I'm going to show you some additional changes that will make our crab have movable legs a little bit and movable claws. So that's kind of what we're going for. And I've opened up my crab scene from yesterday, and you'll see that right now, this is kind of what's going on. And if I scoot over far enough, this head kind of gets detached from the body because we don't really have a body, which is kind of a problem, as you can see. So we're going to make some changes to this document. I'm going to go ahead and open it back up in Illustrator. And in this case, we're going to modify the crab so that we have a body in here because it's kind of an issue that we don't. Now, let me arrange my workspace so we can see. Okay, here we go. Now, so in my layers, we have currently all of these layers, and we have kind of this here, which is technically our head, but since this crab is made kind of, oddly, it's also our body. So we're going to make a copy of this. So I'm just going to drag it down to the little new piece of paper button, and then we're going to drag this down into the body itself. And we're going to put it behind everything just so it's a little easier to keep track of. Now, if you want to, you can make it a different, color or something, just to keep track of it. Now, turn off the other one because I will tell you from experience, I got mine confused and I was clicked on the wrong one. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on this one, use my direct selection so I can get right to it. And I'm just going to make this a little bit darker just so I can see the difference. But anyway, there it is, and that takes care of that. And this is going to be the torso, as we'll call it, that the pieces are connected to. And technically, they're connected in front of it, but that's okay. Now, I've told you in the past that putting a plus sign in front of something means that you will arm it so that it can be animated. They call that, now let me pull up the Adobe site here. There's lots of different things about preparing artwork and auto rigging, and it gives you some suggestions on names for your layers and all that different stuff. But when it gets in here to warping control, that's what we call that. And so it says by default they're treated as a single deformable surface, and if you want something to move independent of that, like we did with the pupils, then we have to arm that by putting that plus sign on it, and that's called warp independent. So when you hear that comment of warp independent, that's what we're talking about. Now, you can do that after you bring it into Character Animator without going back to Illustrator and putting in plus signs everywhere. And that is what we see with a crown. So the warp independent option puts a crown over to the left of that layer. So technically, you wouldn't have to go back every time and put plus signs in. I personally think that's a little bit easier, though. It's kind of easier to keep track of. So another thing I wanted to show you here before we get into this is that you can preview right here on this button the background in black or white or transparent. So you've kind of got those different options. If you know you're going to be using it on a dark background or a light background, it won't actually have that background color. It's simply a preview color. So, all right, so we've done that. Now let's go ahead and take a look here at our crab. I'm going to click on the crab itself, and you can see that it gives us a center orientation point for our crab. And right now I have the head centered on a circle, which is kind of weird because when it moves back and forth, it's like it spins on that circle as if that circle's right here in the middle, right? And so, So what we can do is go in here and move this little point here on the head to kind of what would be, I guess you call the neck of the crab, so that when it moves more based on the neck, see down at the bottom, instead of on that other part. So that's kind of important. Pay attention to these little circles that are in the middle of things because that would be the orientation point of that particular item. So now that we have a body and everything, I'm going to turn the head off. Oops, right here. So now we've got this, and then we can click on body over here. And you can see our body is connected way up there at the top. So same story, if you want your body to be more, like if you wanted it connected to the feet, then you would move it like way down there. And then the body wouldn't move. These would be more planted at the ground. So even though these pieces are kind of moving a little bit, they're staying at the ground, even though they're wiggling a bit. Okay, so that's that. Let me turn my head back on. All right, So now we kind of got it all situated, and notice that automatically there's sort of some gravity at play. You can see the legs sort of wiggling a little bit. As long as we don't have those set to warp independently, they kind of automatically have gravity set in on the character. All right, now I want to make it so that a couple of these legs move a little bit more than they are. So I'm going to come in here, and I've already armed these legs for movement. So you can see here that I have put in some controls on these. And that's why mine are moving and yours wouldn't be. Now, let me show you here. I'll turn off these crowns. This is the warp independent icon. So if I turn these off, you know, it's just kind of sitting there. If I turn them on, I can then modify how they move. So let me click on this leg 4. Leg 4 currently doesn't have anything set to it. Now I want to set the registration point for this one based on how it rotates. So if I wanted to hook up here and rotate kind of from there, then I would click this and put it in this position. Now if I want it to dangle, I can add what's called a dangle handle. So I'm going to click here where I want it to dangle at. So if I want the toe of it to dangle, then I put it there. Now we click on leg 3, same thing. I'm going to position this here and put my dangle handle in. And I've already done that. Oops, that's the stick. Sorry, wrong thing. Let me undo there. Here's my dangle handle. All right, so put that in there. And then you can see I've already added them here on leg 1 and leg 2. And what I've done here to these two is I've added a fixed spot to them. So there is an option here where you can add a fixed handle, and then it sort of stays so that like those 2 feet don't go walking around. They don't move. So these sort of stay in place, but the ones out here on the side, as I move, they can wiggle and they can dangle. So if you want this one to be able to move like the rest, then you wouldn't put a fixed handle in there. You could just click that out of there, and you could put a dangle handle in those as well. So again, click on these to delete them, and then I can put in my dangle handle, and then they can move. See, now they're wiggling quite a bit as well. So it's really totally just what you want your character to look like. Okay. Now we're going to set the arms to warp independent. So again, we'll go back in here, and I have already put plus signs on mine in Illustrator. So my arms have plus signs. If yours do not, then you can go in here and arm the arms, right? Again, press these crowns, and that turns that on or off. So if I turn off these crowns, then they are not armed for motion. They just are stuck and connected. They do have a little bit of automatic gravity, though. And then whenever I arm the arms for motion, then they are less likely to move. See, they're stuck because now they want me to tell it how to make these move. So what we're going to do with the arms is we're going to make these so we can drag them around. So we have a little control. So in this case, we want to position the arms orientation point kind of where it connects. And again, it's easier in my mind to click on the layer and then move these into position. And then we're going to add a different kind of handle here. So if you look, there's different ones that you can choose from down here, and this one's the dragger. So you position it where you want to be able to drag. So let's just put a dragger here, and I'll let you see what this one does. Now, if I move my head around, nothing happens to this one, but if I drag, now it moves. Now it's hopping right on back really quickly. If you don't want it to do that, over here under the dangle, you have some options for the stiffness and the strength. But because we're not dangling and we're dragging, we're going to go over to the dragger one. And so after move, it says return to rest. So I could say after move, hold in place, which means after I move it, it just stays there. So I have full control over this guy's movements. That's kind of cool looking. So maybe you want it to be that way, and then you can fully control it. And when you want it to go back to where it goes, then it goes back to where it goes. Or you can set it so that it returns to rest, but not immediately. So say maybe 2 seconds. If I put a 2-second return to rest, then once I move it, it gradually goes back to its rest position, like so. So if I'm like, hey guys, and it waves, and then I let go, it'll gradually over 2 seconds go back to its resting spot. All right. So if you have a handle and something is moving around unpredictably, you may have to attach it to the creature. Now, this isn't a problem for us on this one because we added that torso, but without a torso, this arm wouldn't have been connected to anything. And so it's possible that as we clicked it and dragged it, it would just detach itself from the body. And if that ever happens, let me just click on the crab and click out here with my arrow. If that ever happens, then what you can do is add a staple. Right here is a staple. And that staple tool makes it so that this stays connected in a certain spot. So I can say staple that right here on this arm so that that arm does not move from that position. Now when I click on the arm, I don't know if I got my staple on there. I think I clicked on the wrong thing. And then we've got our staples in there, and then those will stay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add another dragger over to this side. And depending on where you put the dragger, it drags differently. So like this one here, I put it in the middle. So now when I drag it, it drags from down here. Whereas the other one, I put the dragger up a little higher. So you just have to decide kind of where you want to be able to drag from. Again, it's totally up to you. Now, notice how this is sort of doing like those crazy things outside of businesses that float around and flutter in the air. We can add almost like bones, if you will. I'm going to scoot this up right here with this stick tool. So I can take the stick tool and I can drag and create almost like there's a bone in there. You kind of want to go drag up to about, I guess, the elbow. Now when I go, see that part stays straight. You could actually put multiple sticks in there. So I could have one there and then leave like what we would call the elbow bend and then put another one in. And then you're going to have a little more control. See how now you can kind of see, there we go, how it has almost an elbow because it almost like it has two bones. So the sticks can really make a big difference in how your character looks whenever you're messing with it. So anyway, that's sort of a general gist of how to get this crab moving. We've gone over the warp independent mode. We've gone over dangle handles. We've gone over staples. We've gone over how to add sticks to the line. And so you've kind of got a lot to play around with here at this point. It's totally up to you how you want to animate these. So you can make certain legs draggable, you make the arms draggable. At this point, I'm kind of happy with it, but you decide how you want yours to operate. So have fun with that.